This is the Mental Mettle Podcast, and I am your host, Coach Matt Thomann. I'm a former athlete, teacher, coach, and athletic director that switched careers after surviving cancer and a stroke in the fall of 2020. But I'm also a dad of a son and a daughter that were successful high school athletes that went on to college. Now I use that experience along with my ICF coaching certification when helping teams, coaches, and athletes from all over the country. Each week, I will pose a specific question that will help coaches of all types better understand mental toughness. In the Mental Mettle Podcast, coaches will learn to help their athletes overcome adversity without being the adversity they need to overcome. And welcome back to the Mental Mettle Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Matt Thomann, and I'm here with my guest today, Vince Walker. I recently had Coach Herm on the show, and I know he's a good friend with Vince Walker. And Coach Herm said, "Hey, you ought to have Coach Walker on the show." And so yeah, here we are. I just love, and I was just telling Vince here, my favorite part about this podcast is just hearing. You don't have to be a Hall of Famer, or every coach I talk to gives me a little bit different perspective. Every different player gives me a little bit different perspective on mental toughness, on how they developed it, what they see as important. And I just love having everybody's different perspective. So thanks for coming on, Coach.
You got it. Yeah, really happy to be here. If they kept stats in summertime basketball, I'd have a lot of assists due to Coach Herm Senior. So, and he's the head of the Snake point guard. I don't think you could have a better guest on your podcast, but I'm going to try to match it.
No, he was a great, he had a lot of really cool stuff. He came up from a family that was fun to listen to, and it's really good to see. But like I said, everybody's got a little bit different perspective. They come from different. One of the first things that I picked up from you was so you grew up in 6 different states and you played at 3 different high schools, right?
Yeah, my dad was a basketball coach, so we moved around quite a bit, and it was both good and both learning experience too at the same time. I'll put it like that.
So you've got some really cool perspectives there, because I'm assuming that you played for your dad.
I did.
So you played for your dad. Now, wait a minute. So that also means your dad changed coaching positions 3 times in 4 years?
Yes. He actually got out of it for a year and then got back into it. So
there's got to be a story with that.
Well, so he was at Texas A&M, and Mark Turgeon, the one who, they had such a good run at Texas A&M, he got the Maryland job, and there was talk about, him going with, and he was offered a job. Living out there is a little bit more expensive. It was just a situation where he felt it was best to just wait for something else. And with how fickle the coaching business is, I've come to realize he almost took like what a gap year would be and did some scouting for the NBA, the New Orleans Pelicans at the time. The New Orleans Hornets at the time, now the New Orleans Pelicans.
Gotcha.
Then he got back into coaching at Drake University in Des Moines, and that's how I ended up there.
Okay. So then you just followed. So he's a college coach, and you followed him around playing at different high schools, right?
Yes, sir. You
got to be one of those, like, these high schools that you move into. They got to be thrilled about that. You're like, hey, this guy's a college coach coming, and it's having a college kid, having a coach's kid move in. It's got to be a good deal.
Yeah, I didn't always play like a college or a coach's son, but I don't know. I tried to make the most of where I was at. Try to make the team better. I guess that was all it came down to.
Yeah. What do you pick up from? I love talking. There has to be stuff that stuck with you playing that you like. What are you figuring out now that you're like, Dad was right? I wish I'd have known that. I wish I'd have figured out this later, because now you're coaching, right? Now you're really trying to pick up more of what he was talking about.
Yeah. Just the work ethic that it takes to be a good player. And I know that that's pretty cliche, but I'll tell you what really illuminated in my eyes as I've started coaching is how many kids there are out there, how many good players there are out there. I'm looking through the transfer portal, and there's so many kids who, if we had it our way, would come right in and be great players for us. So just because I'm better than the kid that lives next door to me doesn't mean I'm a great player. Just because I'm the best kid in my town doesn't make me a great player, because there's so many kids out there. And in order to be as good of a player as you want to be, you have to have a pretty special work ethic, especially if you're not one of these people that are blessed with, being 6'8" with a great frame and elite athleticism. I mean, you really have to work at it. That's really the main thing that he emphasized growing up.
Yeah, I think that even those guys, even the 6'8" athletic guys, they got to put the work in.
Yeah.
But there's I can't even put the number on it, but we're talking about there's a lot of guards, right?
Oh,
that two, especially the 2-3, right?
yeah.
And you get the 2-3 in there, and you get guys from, I don't know, 7 or 6'2" or so to 6'4", 6'5", thousands of guys.
You're absolutely right, and they're the 2 and the 3 for a reason. Is because they're not point guards. They don't know how.
That's why I said that, right? Because
it takes something special to lead a team, and if you're not that, then you're a 2 or 3 or something else. And that's no knock, obviously, on the 2s, 3s out there. You have to have them to win games. But yeah, you're right. There is a redundancy of talent in the transfer portal with what you just said.
Yeah, I mean, but if you're going to say you're a shooting guard or a 2 or a 3,
yeah,
that the height really matters,
sure.
Right? So if you're 6'2" versus somebody that's 6'5", they're really going to look more at that 6'5" because it makes a difference. But when you're the point guard, I think it looks a little bit more at the skill, because it's like, okay, yeah, this guy may only be 5'11", but we want him to be the point guard. So he's got to lock up the other point guard, and he got to handle the ball, and we don't really care. But once you get into those other positions, yeah, there's a lot out there.
It's the most important position on the basketball floor. Yeah.
Yeah.
For a reason.
Yeah. So when you're talking about looking at the portal, tell everybody where you're at now, what you're doing, what you've been doing since you were playing days.
Well, you talking about what I look for in the transfer portal?
Yeah, you're coaching right now, right? At Southwest Baptist, is that right?
Southwest Baptist University. It's in the same league as Illinois Springfield, where your son played in the Great Lakes Valley Conference. It's a Division II league, and a really good one at that. And it's an inexact science navigating the transfer portal, but I think that the number one thing is you have to be able to shoot the basketball. Now, obviously, if you're an elite athlete or you're an elite distributor of the basketball, then maybe you can sacrifice shooting a little bit. But I've come to find out that not a lot of coaches do, and that's evidenced by the fact that a lot of the good shooters in the transfer portal don't stay in there very long because they get picked up by somebody else. But that's what I look for.
Yeah, but you were a shooter.
I
right?
was. Yeah, I wasn't always a maker, but I was a shooter.
Hey, you know what? It doesn't matter if they're going in; just matters if they're going up, right?
Yeah, that's right.
How do you then? Everybody wants to say, a lot of guys think they're a shooter. How do you determine if a guy's actually a shooter, though?
Yeah, well, that's pretty easy to explain. We usually like to have a guy that's 36% and up on more than one attempt or one make a game, and if they're well over one make a game, maybe like 2 going on 3, then maybe you can sacrifice maybe a lower percentage. As long as they're on a good team, though, that's also another thing to look at. You don't always get so lucky, but yeah, that's definitely something that's like I said, it's an inexact science, because then you got to identify what level were they playing at. Again, were they on a good team or not? So
yeah, that's really important, because I think there's a lot of people listening to that right now that go, "Oh, my kid will make more than 36%, right? No problem. He should play." But it's the level, and you got to be able to do that. Doing that against the defense is the hard part.
Yep. Quality of the defense. Yeah.
Yeah. So talk to me a little about your playing days. Because we mentioned a little bit, you moved around in high school, but then you went on and played at University of Illinois Springfield.
Yeah.
Right. Tell me a little bit about your playing day, what type of player you are, and just some stuff from that.
Well, just starting from the beginning, I was kind of a late bloomer. My dad is I think at his peak, he was about 6'4". I hope he's not watching this. He's going to think I'm saying he shrunk. But no, he was about 6'4", and I was always kind of the baby-faced kid who could really shoot the basketball, but was probably a step slow. So going into my 9th grade year, had an okay year. 10th grade, really started to kind of hit my growth spurt. I went from about 5'11" to about 6'2". Got moved up to the varsity team, which I was at a really big high school, and like I told you, Alex Caruso was my high school teammate, and I got to learn a lot from him, just kind of how he
Now,
approached
was he
the
older?
game.
Was he older than
He's
you,
2 years
or?
older than me. He was a senior when I was a sophomore, and
Yeah.
he was one of the best teammates I've ever had. And he didn't necessarily need to be. He could have just kind of been the aloof superstar on the team, but that's probably why we were so good in my sophomore year, is because he was that type of leader. Moved to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where I played my junior year, and then my dad got back into coaching. Like I said, at Drake University, so I spent my senior year in Ankeny High School. I broke my ankle. Funny story, I actually slipped on a patch of ice outside of my school and kind of cut my senior season short. And
Where at in your season was that?
about 7 games left, I believe. It was pretty sad. I kind of knew exactly that I was done whenever it happened. So my first thought was I wasn't going to be able to play that night. But then as the pain kept lingering, I was just like, yeah, it's over with. So I went to Illinois Springfield, had to redshirt my freshman year because they actually botched the surgery the first time and had to get another one. So kind of a rough start. But, I knew after that happened originally, that injury happened, I was just like, I just feel like I have unfinished business as a basketball player, and I'd like to continue playing. I wasn't getting recruited out of high school really at all, other than a couple D3s in Iowa. But I knew that, well, I didn't know that I could be a Division II player, but I certainly would have liked to test myself at that. And, I went into their, I went into my first year and I wasn't good at anything except for shooting the basketball. And when I say that, I didn't provide, I wasn't a plus at anything besides shooting the basketball. I wasn't a great athlete. I wasn't a great defender, and I wasn't a good creator, but I did rely on the fact that I could have been an elite shooter. And that's kind of what I leaned into. And, I always live by a quote from John Wood, and don't let what you can't do interfere with what you can do. And I would try to make sure that, whatever deficiencies I have on the basketball floor, they don't get away from the fact that I'm able to make shots, and that's how I help a team.
Mettle is a person's ability to face adversity in a spirited and resilient manner. It is a great skill to have for athletics and for life, but it is not something we are born with. If you want it, you have to forge your mettle. And if you listen to the Mental Mettle podcast, you already know that, but not everybody else does yet. So help me out by ordering and wearing some sweet The Mental Mettle podcast gear. We've got short sleeve tees, long sleeve tees, and some super comfortable hoodies. Order online today and you can have your gear in no time. But the best part is that every order helps support the show and helps me spread the message that mental toughness is a trait that can and should be built. So find the link in the show notes, order your gear, and start showing that you know how to forge your mettle. While always looking at ways increasing your deficiencies as well.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. Don't ever get away from what you are, but you got to be able to find ways to get better as well.
And since this is a mental toughness podcast, I do also want to say that it was a challenge for me mentally to work on the things that I wasn't good at.
Hey, I mean, if you're pretty good, and I'm sure you were in high school, even if you're talking about if you're at any level that you could go on and play D2 or even D3, right? You're a good high school basketball player, right?
Agreed.
And there's going to be a lot of people telling you that you're a whole lot better than that, right? And if you listen to them, it's easy to get complacent, very easy.
Yes.
But the second you go up to the next level, everything changes.
Yeah, everything changes. All of a sudden, you're playing against kids. Everybody's as good as you are. Everybody was really good in high school. What do you do, though, that stands out, that you do at an elite level that translates from high school to college?
Yeah. There's a couple. Well, first of all, Vince, I mentioned my son earlier on, but there's a whole lot of your story that is so my son was a late bloomer. He was 5'9" in high school, a freshman year, ended up now he's 6'3", 6'4", right? So there's that. His senior year with about a fourth of the season left, little more than that, he broke his hand and was done for the season.
Wow.
Went to the University of Illinois Springfield, redshirted his first year, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, and he's a shooter. That's his thing. And I'm just like, I'm listening to that and I'm like, that's real. I should have you connect with him. Just like you guys are like kindred spirits. But when you talk about being a late bloomer, I think that is one of the biggest gifts for players that parents don't understand.
Yeah.
How they want them to grow early and do this. And I think it's if you have the right mindset, right? If you have the right mindset of getting beat when you're a kid, being a late bloomer is phenomenal.
You know, I actually had a tweet like my first year of coaching whenever I was working in elite camp for the first time. I'm like, kids are walking into the gym with like full grown beards and, you know, they've been shaving and all that. I'm just like, you need to show up with a clean face. So then that way the coaches think you still got more room to grow and get better.
Right.
So that's back when I knew it all.
Yeah, I know. One of my favorite quotes. Well, this is going to say wrong because it's my quote. It's what I say all the time because I used to be a junior high administrator, and I always used to say that junior high state championships are won by the team with the most mustaches, and it's the kids that grow early are really good early.
Yep,
early, but that doesn't always stick around, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure there's lessons you picked up from being a late bloomer that it changes your mindset as you don't lose the underdog mindset. I don't think.
No, you do not. I guess the biggest thing that I learned with playing or being a late bloomer is that I learned how to play a role pretty early on. I was by no means the star player, but I did everything I could to kind of carve out a niche on that team. And by the time I kind of caught up to everyone, I was able to kind of be more of a pronounced primary player by the end of my high school career. But then when I made that transition to college, I'm back to being a role player, but that was a comfortable position for me. I'd been there before.
Yeah. So then you played all 4 years, or was it 5 years?
Yeah, 5 years.
All 5 years at Illinois Springfield.
Because I was injured the first year and then I played 4. I didn't get to play 5 years like some kids do nowadays.
Well, that should be out now, right? We should be done with that. Last year,
you're right.
I don't. Well, just having a son that went through it, that put a real bottleneck on stuff, right?
Sure.
It really changed the whole landscape of college basketball or all sports, really.
Yeah. Well, he grew up, or he was in Illinois as a high schooler, so he probably played with a mask on.
Yeah.
Which I couldn't ever imagine doing.
I look back at those videos now, and I'm like, I can't believe we were doing that, right? That was, and we could go all day about the whole COVID regulation. But seriously, it's crazy. It's like friends of mine see that aren't from Illinois, and they're like, what are they doing? I'm like, they made him do it, right? But yeah, crazy. So what prompted you, other than your dad being a coach, what prompted you to go straight into coaching from your playing days?
I just love basketball. I couldn't imagine myself doing anything else. I know that that's kind of what everyone says, and hopefully I'm blessed enough to continue to stay in this, but I'd like to think that coaching has prepared me for maybe other avenues of a job. But I knew that I loved to help kids. I did it even before I stopped playing. I don't know, just my basketball upbringing, it was like I moved from place to place so much, and I went into places not really having many friends, but I knew I had basketball. And basketball is also a great tool for me to make friends. So this game means a lot more to me than just a game. It was an avenue for me to find friends and kind of pursue excellence in something and work on a craft and just kind of be, I guess, obsessed, for lack of better words, with something. It was just something that I really was just a good outlet for me, and I like to, I guess, pass that on to the next generation of kids.
I can't imagine changing. I mean, you changed high schools 3 times.
Yeah.
I don't know how you do that you do it. Kids do it all the time, but basketball had to help it
tremendously.
Yeah.
No, it was perfect. Very fortunate, because if I didn't have that, I don't know if I would have made friends quite as easily.
Yeah. But then that's interesting. You changed high schools 3 times. But then you got to college and you stayed in one spot the entire time, right? Yeah.
I kind of pride myself on that. I told someone the other day, I kind of am glad. And your son's got his own story, so I'm not like hating on him at all, but I do get to say I had one alma mater.
Yeah. No, it is nice. Well, that has just changed so much. Like it's
So
not
much.
when you talk. I know you were talking a little bit before about my son, but everybody, like a lot of kids are changing, right? It's just, and I don't know, good, bad. Again, I don't want to get into the whole thing. But the landscape is different, right? Because as a coach, you can go, oh, I don't know about it, but you're also looking at the portal to plug some holes, right? You're like, you know what I'm saying?
I guess I can't hate on it if I'm the one that's looking in the portal for new players. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you do. I'm sure you're like, hey, we have this deficiency on our team, and let's, like, you do have a change. You have more opportunity as a coach to be like, you don't have to wait as many years to be like, here's our system. I like our system. I believe in our system. Here's what we're missing. We can go get that, and you're going to find out, if we're talking like a science experiment. You're figuring out the answers a little bit quicker.
Sure. Well, I mean, you can be mad, glad, angry, or sad about the transfer portal and name, image, and likeness, but it's here to stay, and the ones who adapt to it are gonna make it,
Yeah,
and the ones who don't are going to die. Well, they're gonna be out of it.
yeah, and I
So,
mean, it changes. What do you notice? And you've just been in coaching for 5 years now, and we see some of the Hall of Fame coaches have been there for years, and they're just like, see the big names, right? That are like, I don't know about this, and they don't really like the system.
yeah,
But being a younger guy, you're in the place to be like, it's a different landscape, but it's all new to you anyway,
sure.
right? Like, how do you handle that? How do you handle the idea of getting the right players and keeping the right players so that they don't leave?
You got to re-recruit them every single day.
What does that mean? Everybody says that, and I know what is that? What's the, in actuality, what's that mean?
Yeah. Building a good, real relationship with them, making the case for being at the same school a compelling thing. Yeah, they could go out and pursue Division I opportunities or just higher levels of basketball, but at the end of the day, they view staying at the school that they're at from a holistic standpoint more beneficial to them in the long run. I think that the boss that I work for, Coach Niven, I think he's done a good job of that because, I mean, we did have people enter the transfer portal this year, but I think that when kids kind of evaluate, I could probably go to another school, maybe get more minutes, go to more parties. There's not a whole lot of that at Southwest Baptist. I could go to Division I and, get my name on ESPN, play in March Madness. But I get better at basketball here, and I get better as a person here, and I'm about as well taken care of as I could possibly imagine. I don't even want to explore an alternate to that. So why would I leave? Why would I sacrifice a really good thing for the potential of being a little bit better, but probably worse?
What's really interesting is because I work with college athletes, and I'm very much into their just emotional well-being, right? Because there's a lot of kids that struggle. They take the sport that's their favorite sport, and they start to struggle at it. And there's all kinds of terrible stories with really high level athletes that have some mental health issues and stuff like that. And I'm still trying to figure out, because we're very early on this, if the idea of the portal and the ability to change schools is better for the athlete and their mental, to have that out, or if it's worse because it gives them that option to get out of a hard situation. And I don't know the answer, and I'm not expecting you to have the answer. I just kind of like,
Yeah,
it's got me thinking about it, because I know there are bad situations that it's really good for a
absolutely.
player to leave, right? But then there's also situations that it's like, it'd be better for you to stay here and deal with this. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
I totally agree with you. And yeah, to say that it's all a detriment to the kids is to assume that there are no bad coaches out there that
Thank you.
don't
That's what
abuse
yeah.
and don't demean. I mean, come on. There's a lot of situations where it'd be in the kid's best interest to leave. I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
denying that at all. I think that you look at it on a case-by-case basis. Is it the right move for a kid to want to leave and go somewhere else? Or have they just hit like a learning or whatever you call it, an obstacle that they'd be
Yeah.
better off to have overcome. I think if you want
Yeah.
to transfer down a level and get more playing time, I mean, I think that that's a great reason to leave. Everyone wants to be able to play and kind of have a
Yeah.
pronounced role on a team. I don't see any problem with that at all. If you're sick of playing for a coach that demands a lot out of you but is not demeaning, then I think that you might be better off just staying where you're at
Yeah.
and accepting the fact that it's uncomfortable to reach higher levels of performance, but that's what the coach is demanding of you. So I'd probably stick that one out in that specific case. But you're totally right. No, every kid's got their reason, and it's not always the kid's fault.
Yeah, and it's we're definitely in the pendulum has swung now that kids can go. They feel like they have all the power and they can go do what they want, right?
Yeah.
But coaches at all levels are going to have to start to adjust. As you're talking about re-recruiting, there's been the entire entire life of college basketball. The coaches have had that power, right?
Right.
So they're going to have to adjust a little bit and meet the kids halfway, right?
Yeah.
They just are, and I think that we'll get there. It is fascinating. I know. And you being in the middle there at that Division II level, it is hard to keep players that are, the more you have a guy do really well, the more likely that they're going to want to jump ship and go play D1.
Yeah.
Right. But as I'll let you speak to this, not all the D1 programs and all the D1 conferences are necessarily better than the D2 level you're playing.
Yeah, absolutely. You look all the time, and there's D2s beating Division Ones. I'm honestly kind of surprised that some D1s are still looking for D2 games. When I was at Abilene Christian, we would never play D2. We wouldn't play any team that was able to give out full ride scholarships. That was kind of the rule of thumb there. I digress, though. I mean, yeah, you're right. There's definitely not very good D1 teams out there that could lose to any D2 team. Yeah, the ADD kicked in. What was kind of the premise of this question?
No, you're good. Just the idea that kids, I do think the problem is if a kid says, hey, I want to go play just so I'm a D1 player, that's a misnomer.
Yeah. And we sell the professional dream just like any other Division II player wants. I mean, yes, no, you can't play March Madness. You can't be on CBS in March unless you make it to the Elite Eight if you're a Division II player. But if you want to play professionally, I'm looking at this wall of all conference players that we've had in our past years at SBU, and it's certainly available to them. But no, I think that all levels of basketball serve every kid so well because either they're going to learn how to be a star player in a primary role, and that comes with its own burdens, or they learn how to be kind of reserve player or a bench player, and they learn how to be a key piece in something other than just putting points on the board, which truthfully I think is a lot harder to do.
Oh, yeah. Being that, yeah. Yeah. So one of the things I asked you before, I asked you your definition of, mental toughness.
Yeah.
And I loved your answer so much so that I want to go through it. And I got a couple points I want to bring up. You said mental toughness is the ability to endure circumstances through logical rationale. And it's the logical rationale. So the first half, ability to endure circumstances. Everybody's going to throw that in there. You've got logical rationale in mental toughness. And that piques my interest.
Yeah.
Why did you put that in there? What do you mean by that?
Well, I have this thesaurus at home where I just went through and looked at logic and rationale and, kind of, I'm kidding. But yeah, no, I just thought about like a mental struggle that I went through. And yeah, no, I was kind of like in my feelings about like, I should do X, Y, and Z. But, then you look at it from a bigger picture, like, yeah, that's the way to do what I'm doing. But I certainly don't want to do that. It's certainly the more uncomfortable route, but yeah, like logically that's the next step or that's the course of action I need to take. So that's why I said logical rationale, because it's the right thing to do, sans feelings and personal comfort. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's the hard part, Vince, right? is like when we talk about mental toughness or somebody not being mentally tough, it's because you say sans emotion, but it's about emotion, right?
Yeah.
It's about being very emotional and full of angst and all those things. It makes sense to want to do something logically and have with rationale, but the trick is doing that when you're full of emotion, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, good point. I guess it's also really important to keep the end goal in mind. How do you want this situation to play out and work backwards from there?
Yeah, no, that's good. Always looking at where you want to be and making the slow steps to get there. Mental Mettle Coaching is driven by a passion for sharing knowledge and experience that will allow athletes and coaches to grow, play, and live in a positive way. We offer a range of coaching and professional development services. First and foremost, we offer individual mental coaching for athletes, and it's easily the most efficient and effective way to help athletes replace fear and anxiety with positivity and confidence. Mental Mettle Coaching has helped middle school setters to high school lacrosse middies to D1 offensive linemen. If you have an athlete that needs to improve their mindset in athletics, mental coaching is the answer. We also offer team coaching, which uses the same concepts as individual mental coaching, but applies them in a group setting. Team bonding outings are great, but they do nothing to address the thoughts and feelings that can derail a team. Team coaching does address that, and it's a great option for helping your team grow. Finally, Mental Mettle Coaching offers social, emotional learning, professional development programs for educators and coaches. There are self-paced online programs, there are virtual coaching options, and even in-person seminars available. This PD will help increase the mental health of your staff and eventually your student athletes and the culture of your school. All of the Mental Mettle coaching programs have the same goal. Our mission is to help athletes and coaches develop a resilient and spirited mindset that will help them confidently face any obstacles or challenges they seek, regardless of their situation. If you would like to see the same in your athlete, your team, and your staff, contact Coach Thomann for more information. Yeah. So Vince, you mentioned a little bit about, I forget how you phrased it, but something of your own struggles, some of your own lapse in mental toughness or however you want to put it. Do you have a story, individual time that you can tell about?
Yeah, so like my junior year was a hard time for me when it came to shooting the basketball, percentage wise, obviously. So like my sophomore and senior year, percentage wise, I was really good. I mean, good statistically. I mean, I don't know how you want to judge my performance, but the numbers didn't lie. My junior year, I didn't shoot the basketball well, and I obviously it was a slump, and it was 100% mental. I mean, you can't tell me that I was a worse shooter my junior year than sophomore and senior year from like a I don't know, biomechanical standpoint, for lack of a better words. I just kind of I went through it mentally. And, um, I've had time since to kind of diagnose what the heck happened there. And I just figured, well, I was shooting the same. I was probably getting the same quality of looks. My shot selection probably wasn't much different. Um, and I just figured, I was practicing enough. I was getting reps in before practice and doing enough stuff on my own to be a good enough shooter. So why wasn't the ball going in? And I think that everyone's been through a slump before, and they can kind of attest that the mental side of it is, yeah, you rep your jump shot out, you rep it out, but heck, you're looking at the basket and you're seeing the ball clank off the rim time and time again, and that can almost be counterintuitive, to as opposed to helping you, it could be hurting you in a big way. And
Yeah, because it starts to become the narrative you tell yourself, right?
exactly, it's a voice in your head, like we've previously discussed. It's a voice in your head, and you can either listen to it, or you can not listen to it, or you can have it say something. You can manipulate it.
Well, I think that's a big important part is manipulating it, but I think you have to be able to have the tools to do that. And I don't think everybody's got that. And I think sometimes we actually some athletes get trained that negative voice in their head is a good thing. That drives me. That's what makes me stronger. Is it pushes me to be better or whatever. Maybe for a little bit, but if you start to listen to that voice for too long, like it's an issue.
Sure. Confidence is a huge part of any athlete ever will tell you how important confidence is, and it doesn't matter if you're great at your sport, if you're bad at your sport, you are your best version of yourself if you're confident. And like I said, I don't know if I mentioned before, but I'm kind of an avid golfer. I really like to go out and play, and it's challenging, certainly from a mental standpoint. And
it's definitely for mental games. It's up there.
Yeah, no, it's about as challenging or competitive a game as I can currently play. So, I got this excerpt from a book that I used to read whenever I was really getting into golf. It's called "Golf Is Not a Game of Perfect" by Bob Rotella. Really,
I love book recommendations. There's some good stuff out there to listen to for athletes and just all kinds of people. But yeah,
and I don't know if I'd recommend this book to a non-golf player, but I certainly know that you could use a lot of the same lessons for any other sport. I mean, I got an excerpt in here if you want me to
lay it on me. I love it.
So, kind of talking about this chapter is anyone can develop confidence. That's the title of the chapter.
Okay.
And it says, without confidence, you can't trust your physical ability and you can't perform at your best. But a lot of golfers that I speak to about confidence have misconceptions that hold them back. They think that confidence is an attribute that they cannot choose to seek and acquire. They think it's something that descends on an athlete, like a revelation from above after he's performed perfectly for a long time. Sometimes the player struggling with this kind of misconception will ask me which comes first, confidence or success. And they understand that a player cannot win tournaments without confidence, but they think that you have to win tournaments before you can get confidence. If that were true, then no one would ever win a tournament for the first time.
Right.
And in fact, anyone can develop confidence if he or she goes about it properly. Confidence is not something that you're born with or something you're given. You control it. Confidence is what you think about yourself in your golf game or any game you play. And here's where it gets really good. It says, confidence at the level of any single shot is not anything more than thinking about your ball going to the target. If you're thinking about the ball going to the target, you're confident. And I guess the same can be true for basketball. Obviously, thinking about the shot going in, practicing those mental reps. I think we talked before you hit record about how you would kind of suggest to your athletes, do mental reps. Don't even get out on the court. Go ahead and just practice the mental reps in your room or whatever.
Yeah, visualization's this really cool thing this was your junior year of college.
Correct.
Right? So you had played junior high, high school, and 2 years of college, and were known for being a shooter, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So you can make shots. You have the form, right? And if you have the muscle memory and you have a good form, sometimes, like you said, it's almost counterproductive to go out there. You should always get reps. I'm not telling you not to get reps, but if you're not shooting well, like putting your form out there and seeing clang is counterintuitive, right? And when you lay down and do some visualization, they can all go in, right? Yep. And I'm not saying that you can create yourself to be a good shooter without any reps. That's not what I'm saying. But I think if you have enough muscle memory and enough reps and you get in a slump, I think visualization is a great way to get out of it, because you control the outcome in your mind. And what's really cool is your brain doesn't know the difference. Like you kind of develop the same chemicals in your brain when you're hitting the shot in your mind as when it's really happening.
Yeah.
And that's
something that I've kind of translated to my coaching career. Is I found it was the best whenever you had people around you, not to boost your ego, but to tell you how great of a shooter you are, because it's good to hear, and it just kind of promotes the voice in your head or mindset of confidence.
I know, and it matters. And and that whole idea, I think a lot of people think you have to have that negative voice to drive you, and I just think it's I think it's dangerous. I think it becomes, if you let that thing if you listen to that too long, it becomes it starts to build that negative outcomes, and it's what you're expecting. Yeah. And and the other thing about confidence is you've, like I said, you've had enough experience that you'd had times you were still making some shots. You were talking about your percentage was down, but you're still probably making shots, right?
Correct.
The trick is to make sure and lean into celebrating the makes,
Yep.
right? So we get ourselves what we call confirmation bias. So you go into a game and you're thinking about missing shots, and then when you miss shots and that become what you notice, you're like, oh, I missed that shot, I missed that shot, I missed that shot, and you completely forget about the ones that you actually won and that you actually made.
Good tip is that whenever you miss a shot, the voice you need to tell yourself is, that's not me. Every time you make a shot, say, that's me. You miss a shot, that's a different version of that's not me. You disassociate yourself from the shot.
And it's agreed, disassociate. And look, we're talking about brain hacks, right?
Sure.
We're not talking about we're talking about, we're talking about making a ball go through a hoop. It's not like we have to be like uber truthful about that. Like, all the best shooters miss more than they make, right?
Yep.
They all do, right? But the trick is to not worry about those misses and worry about those makes and celebrate those makes, visualize those, celebrate those, and don't let your positive voice be louder than your negative voice. And I think that can be a struggle.
It can be. But what I've come to find out over the years is the people that shoot the basketball well or perform well at a really high level, irrespective of like just natural athletic ability, being able to jump from the free throw line, people that perform well, that are really skilled, either fall into two categories. One, they're either the super tough, mentally resilient type, and nothing can stand in their way, or they're the people that almost seem like they don't care sometimes. They're the people that kind of go in it with a really kind of laissez-faire mindset and think they, I don't know, almost like a spacious type of mindset, like a space cadet is what I've heard people be referred.
I've had a lot of,
you know what I mean?
I've had a lot of athletes that, and their parents would say, hey, if we get them not care so much,
that's it,
they would be good. And that's not what we want, because we want to have to care, right? But it's what you need to care less about is the overall outcome.
Sure.
Right? Because that is so much something you can't control.
Yeah.
Right? Like as a player, you have some input into what happens in the game, of course, right? But it's only a percentage, right? So whether or not you win or lose isn't all up to you. So what you need to be controlling about, or what you need to be focused on, and what you need to care about is the things you can absolutely control, which is, hey, am I taking the right shot at the right time in the right way? Is this part of our flow of our offense? Did I get everything right? And I think it's a big part of it. And yeah, there are those guys that are crazy mentally tough, the Jordans, the Kobes that are, I mean, I don't know if you're aware of that. Have you ever heard of David Goggins, a guy like that? Yeah. I mean, those guys are elite from a mental, and I don't know that you can ever create. I don't know if you can ever be that. I think that there's something with those guys or gals that do that. But I think all of us can become somebody who's a little bit more, I don't want to say care less, but care on the right things.
Care on the right things, yeah. No, I like that a lot.
I have worked with, my brother was like that, and I played with a guy, Eric Smith, who he won a state championship in Illinois, and they were phenomenal athletes, very accomplished, really good. But you might always suggest that they don't look like they care. They do, but they're doing everything they can, but they didn't get upset when they lost a game necessarily, because they knew they did everything they could. And sometimes I think that you see somebody, it's like after a game, they're just distraught and, you can't talk to them, whatever. It's like that's not mental toughness either, because you're really focusing on a negative and all these things. And the mentally tough kid is the kid that did everything they could,
right?
Enjoyed the game, maybe lost, but is fine going out for pizza afterwards. And they're like, hey, we'll get it next time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know how you reconcile. I mean, obviously you want to be upset about winning because you care and all that, but I don't know. You do have to be a little bit upset, but you can't be upset about you know your effort. You can't be regretful about it.
Yeah, I like to say forget the less, remember the lesson, right? Um, I mean, of course, if you're not learning from your losses, you're not getting any better, but you can't be, you know what I mean? You can't be so distraught that you don't even want to play again, or you don't, you know, it beats you down too much, but it's a fine line sometimes.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. All right, coach. So what did we miss? What did we not talk about? We should have. What did I not ask you that I should have?
I think that routine and process is something that kids need to fall in love with. No matter where you're at in the stage of life, obviously basketball players or sports, I mean, athletes in general need to fall in love with the process. And I know that sounds really kind of cliche and poster board kind of quote, but um, us humans are creatures of habit and creatures of routine, and um, you just kind of have to get started. I did this thing back in the fall. It's called 75 Hard. I don't know if you're familiar with
Yep.
it, but
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was something that really challenged my mental toughness because of just how hard it was. But it really got easy on the latter half of it because of the routine that it provided me and the structure um, and the discipline. I
Yep.
think there's something to be said for that. As humans, we're kind of programmed like that, and it's hard to get going on, but it is certainly easy to maintain once you've really kind of stuck with it for a while.
The real trick to trust the process that we see, you know, on all the whatever, is that if you actually start to trust the process becomes what you're after. Like if you're ever popping your head up from the process and being like, when do I get my rewards? When do I get my rewards? You're not trusting the process. Like you have to trust the process so much that the process is what you're doing.
Right,
It's
because
not.
the path to success isn't always linear. You're not going to
No,
see
no, it's
linear
no.
and you're not going to see
It's
an
not.
equal amount of results from the amount
No,
of work you put in. So
absolutely not. And that's not what it's about. It's like, and you get to the point where, like you said, that 75 hard or trust in the process, like the mindset is enjoying the
yeah,
process and enjoying putting everything you can into it. And if that means you don't win games or if that means you don't get the recognition, so be it. But
agreed.
that's hard, right? That's hard.
Easier said than done.
It is. It is. So, hey, coach, it's been a phenomenal interview. I can't thank you enough. And anything else?
Thank you, Matt. No, I really enjoyed this conversation, and we'll stay in touch.
Hey, we will. Thanks,
You
coach.
got it. Talk to you later.
Mettle is a person's ability to face adversity in a spirited and resilient manner. It is a great skill to have for athletics and for life, but it is not something we are born with. If you want it, you have to forge your mettle. And if you listen to the Mental Mettle podcast, you already know that, but not everybody else does yet. So help me out by ordering and wearing some sweet The Mental Mettle podcast gear. We've got short sleeve tees, long sleeve tees, and some super comfortable hoodies. Order online today and you can have your gear in no time. But the best part is that every order helps support the show and helps me spread the message that mental toughness is a trait that can and should be built. So find the link in the show notes, order your gear, and start showing that you know how to forge your mettle. Great interview there with Coach Vince Walker of Southwest Baptist and formerly of his University of Illinois Springfield playing days. And young guy, young coach, and that's one of my favorite things to do about this podcast is I've had Hall of Famers on the show before, but I don't have to have Hall of Famers on here, right? I think that young, hungry players and coaches know a lot about, even if it's anecdotal, they have a really good handle on why mental toughness and just mentality is so important. I think the the big takeaway I took from that conversation is I talk about slumps sometimes, and a lot of times that's when I get a lot of my clients come to me in slumps, shooting slumps, playing slumps, hitting slumps, not playing well, not being able to play like they know they can. And that's fine. I mean, I understand it. You don't take your, we don't, a lot of times we don't go to the dentist until the tooth hurts. We don't take the car in until it's making a noise, even though we ought to do regular maintenance on some stuff. We go and get help whenever there's a problem. And that's what I see. I have parents come to me all the time, and usually it's not because everything, they don't come to me like everything's great, mentally tough. We're just wanting to make them better, right? That's happened a couple times, but not very often. Usually it's they're really struggling. They're getting into they went up a level and they're not as good as they thought they were, and they're struggling. For some reason they quit hitting, they quit shooting, whatever, and they're trying to get a hold of me. And a lot of times I get parents get a hold of me and clients, and it's like we have a conversation, and they want to start sessions the next day, right? Because they can't, everything's so urgent, and that's fine, right? As I know, I wouldn't have near as many clients if it weren't for that. But it really speaks to when we know that mentality matters, because we know that we can see kids, players, athletes, whatever, do really, really well and then have it just stop for no reason. Doesn't even have to be a reason it doesn't even have to be due to like playing different competition or anything like it. It just stops for whatever reason. And then it gets into the head, it gets into the psyche, it gets in the narrative that we tell ourselves. And that can come out a whole lot of ways. It can come out just in their body language. It can come out in their inner voices, just affecting their confidence, making them more anxious, all these things. And it's something that ought to be addressed. And if it's not addressed, it can really spiral down and make the game not any fun. And they just, all of a sudden they aren't any good. They don't want to do it anymore. And that can be a struggle, but they have to have a way to get out of it. And that's where, and sometimes, and players sometimes just get out of slumps. It happens, right? You're not playing well and then you get better. But it's usually something mentally happens to help it. The work I do is helping that along, having a tool to make it happen, right? So I think that speeds that process up, and it helps them deal with adversity and deal with slumps and to deal with not playing well a little bit quicker. I didn't have a bad game doesn't become 2 games or 3 games or 4 games or a season, right? You have a bad game and you're like, okay, I have the tools to deal with this. And he was talking about, I love that excerpt that he put from that book, just about how important it is to have confidence. And confidence it's a weird thing to understand, because I do think a lot of people, as it said in that book, that confidence, we believe, is just something that you're either born with, or you only get confidence because you do things right and you do things well. Well, what if you're not doing things well and you're not doing things right? Well, it's hard to have confidence. And that's where the mind can really be, I guess, manipulated is the word, because a lot of these tools, manipulate is maybe not the right word. I wish I could take that back, but that's all right. What we're doing is we're looking for the positives, and whenever we're talking about building confidence on actual factual things positively, they are there. It's just we become this, we start to get this in a slump. We have this confirmation bias where we start to see the negative, right? And you think every shot is a missed shot, or it's not going in, or you start looking at the negatives. What we're trying to do is switch that and look for the positives that are always there. Always there. If you get to the point in a sport where you feel like you're having a slump, that means there were times that were better. There were times that you were good. Well, then there are positives there. right? And you can lean back into them. And it also gives you something to visualize. I talked about visualization, how important that is. If you've already got a good form or you already got a good base on how to play, the muscle memory's there. Knowing what to do in situations is already there. You just have to learn to visualize some stuff and see it happening. That's the manipulation. Okay, that's the brain hack that our brain. I'm not going to get into this. I've had some other conversations on this podcast about the brain, but we can actually. Your brain doesn't see the difference, doesn't know the difference as far as making these pathways and the dopamine and all these chemicals. It doesn't really see the difference between visualizing it and having it actually happen. And you can visualize making shots, and it will build that repetition and that muscle memory for doing it the right way so that you don't have to think about it in the moment. You just go up there and hit. You just go shoot. And if you don't have to think about it, it's probably more likely to happen. So a lot of times when we go into a slump, we're thinking about it. Oh man, I'm in a slump. Don't strike out. Don't miss the shot. Well, the last thing you say is the first thing you do, and that sort of thing. So the visualization helps us give us focus on the positive end result that we're looking for that's controllable, right? Putting that shot up in the right way and in that form without really having to think about it. And that's what we're looking for with that visualization. It's more likely to happen. And then also when good things do happen, to really celebrate it. And people don't do that enough, right? We have a bad game or two and we really beat ourselves up for being in a slump. I'm not hitting well. I'm not doing this well. And we give ourselves we're really focused on that negativity and beating ourselves up. Well, we should be even more excited when we do things well. But a lot of times we play that off. Like, we have a really good game, we hit really well, or we shoot really well. And we're like, I'm supposed to do that. Right. So we don't give ourselves any credit. And I'm not talking around going around being arrogant, and all those things, but you have to at least give yourself some credit for doing things the right way and be like, hey, I put a lot of work in. I made those shots. That's on purpose. I did that. And give yourself some credit, some recognition for doing things the right way, giving yourself some, the others that helped you, giving gratitude to others, gratitude all the way around, actually. Like being thankful that you have this ability, being thankful that you had this time, being thankful that you had people to work with you and have that be your focus. And that's how you start to build that confidence is through that celebration when things do go well. So be even more excited when things go well, will help, but less anxious and excited when things aren't going well. That's the trick, is being positive and being able to do that. So great interview there. I love talking to Coach Walker. I had some cool stories. Again, it's my favorite part of the podcast is just getting to meet people and hear their stories, and everybody. I love it when we have a podcast and we talk, and he and I talked a little bit afterwards, and it got his brain going and him thinking about different things in mentality. And that's what I want. Like he comes in and he talks about mental toughness, and he's a coach, and now he's going to think about things a little bit differently when he goes back to his team. And that's what I love, is seeing things differently and sharing some of this idea and this, message of positivity and positive psychology and just this mental toughness, how it can be developed. And I just love it. So, once again, I just, thanks for listening. Please share for me. Share my services. I put this podcast out. It's a free resource, but hey, I do this for a business. So please share my ideas. I do the group coaching. I do, professional development with coaches, and I most of my stuff is working with individual athletes. So if you know somebody struggling a little bit mentally and needs some help, shoot them my number, shoot them my information, have them listen to a podcast and get a hold of me, and I'd love to help. So once again, this has been the Mental Mettle Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Matt Thomann, and remember, always forge your mettle. Thanks again for listening to the Mental Mettle Podcast, produced by Coraggio Media, sponsored by QuickCut, a video management platform for every level of play, and by Mental Mettle Coaching, helping athletes learn to face adversity in a spirited and resilient way. The Mental Mettle podcast is created each week to help players develop more mental toughness, and that is something that will help all of us. So help me out and like and share the Mental Mettle podcast with your friends. Until next time, keep forging your mettle.